I'm Andrew Joseph Keith. I'm an artist and sculptor, and in this video I'm going to go over 5 visual hacks for artists that you can't unsee that will help you better understand the portrait. I'll be using visuals for my new ebook, An Artist's X-Ray Vision, The Portrait. So let's get into it. One of the first visuals, it's in the section on simplifying the head, and this one I just find to be really useful. And it's this right here, the simplification of the head from the side view. It can be simplified into a bloated triangle. I've heard it described. I saw this on one of Steve Houston's videos talking about simplifying the head. This egg shape from the front, really an egg shape that starts at the back and then moves towards the chin. And then from the front, this bloated triangle really simplifies nicely the forms of the head. You can see if I try to do that with lines, you can simplify it, but you need quite a bit more lines, and the simplification just isn't as nice and clean as realizing that the head can be simplified from the side view into this bloated triangle, almost like a triangle that's been filled up like a balloon. And there's a whole section on these simplifications because the thing about simplifications, the portrait especially, is so difficult that if you don't understand how to simplify it and get the basic essential elements there first, then it's going to be impossible to get it looking right. You really have to start off with that accurate structure from the beginning. So that's the first one. You look at the side view, look for that bloated triangle, and you'll be able to find it. All right, next we're going to be talking about the cranial unit system. This system, I feel like it's way better than the head unit system that most of us learn or we see in art books all the time. But this is a cranial unit, so it's basically the distance from the widest point at the back of the skull. Here you can see that 5 eyes across. If you're measuring in eyes, like an eyeball on either side of the eyes, eyes in between the eyes. If you're measuring the head in eyeballs, you get 5 eyeballs, makes 1 cranial unit. And I find that these cranial units just translate really nicely to aligning with bony landmarks of the body. Clavicles, 1 unit from that first cranial unit down to the pit of the neck. The humerus, 2 units from the elbow to the knuckles of the fingers. The femur, 3 units, and then 3 units from the knee down to the bottom of the foot. And then you can see that skull and how we find that cranial unit. It's fairly easy to find. And this is especially useful if you do sculpting, which I do a lot of, because I use this cranial unit system to build my wire armatures so that all of the proportions of the body, which we all struggle with, proportions are difficult, they're established early on. And if you're interested in videos on making wire armatures, there's a bunch on this channel, different methods for making wire armatures, but they're all based on this cranial unit measuring system. I definitely look into learning this system, making it something that's in your tool belt as an artist. All right, the next visual hack has to do with the chin from the side view. Still looking at the head from the side view, but a lot of people struggle with this. They make this blocky chin. Here you can see an example of what not to do, and then the accurate angles of the chin. But an easy way to find the angle of the chin is if you just have a skull, a little plastic one, that's great. I've drawn in some guidelines to help me. But if you take that skull, lay it down, you'll notice that the chin and then the back of the angle of the jaw right here, as well as the external occipital protuberance back here, they all align when you lay the skull down. It maybe wobbles a little bit from the side, but that means that there's this line that travels back from the angle of the jaw to the back of the skull, and if you can find that line, then you kind of know, okay, this bottom of the chin is pointing back towards the bottom of that external occipital protuberance. So that's just a little visual hack to make sure that you're not going way off with this angle, making it so that it's just shooting off into space, shooting off towards the back. That should be pointing right towards that back there. So there's another visual hack. Once you realize it, once you think about it, then it'll help you when representing the skull or representing the portrait. So what are we at? That's number 3. Okay. All right, number 4 for visual hacks, we'll just talk about some of the differences between the male skull and the female skull. And I've gone in and drawn some lines to show you those. And basically, when you're thinking about the male skull, you're thinking blocky, angular. The bony features are larger, the brow ridge, the jawbone larger. The female skull, things are smaller, more rounded, softer forms, angles like the jaw are smoother, less bony protrusions, less angular, softer forms. So here you can see those drawings, even though it's just a skull, you know, and if you ignore the colors, one of them just feels more masculine, the other feels more feminine. And so when representing the portrait, if you can just think of, okay, edging towards blockiness when it comes to the male portrait or towards round, smooth lines when it comes to the female portrait. That will really help. Whether it's the eye sockets, or look at this, how the nose transitions to the brow and then the tip of the nose. On females, it's usually this big sweeping S-curve. On males, it's really broken up into these angles. And when you add up these differences in the skull, then you can really push something towards a more masculine feeling character or a more feminine one. What is that? Is that number 4? All right, let's get down. There's a whole section of the book on fat pads of the face because I think that the fat pads are actually more important than the anatomy. This book covers, we go over all of the anatomical forms. You can see all of the muscles of the face. We go over all of it. But the fat pads, they're easier to remember and they inform the shape of what's happening on the portrait a lot more than the muscles because the muscles are actually very thin. Most of the muscles that are used for expression are just skin to skin. Basically, all that they have to do is move the skin around so they don't become really bulky. They're not like the muscles that move your joints. You know, the muscles in your arm, your chest, those are actually moving parts of the body. It's just moving your skin for expression. And so the muscles themselves don't affect the forms of the face as much as these fat pads. So we go over all of those fat pads, but then what I wanted to show is how these fat pads also inform the rhythms of the face. So if you look at something like this drawing right here, this has all of those fat pads, and then over top of that, I've drawn in some rhythms. Now you can find all sorts of these different methods and ways of representing how the features connect with one another. This is just one system of looking at the rhythms that I really like. That kind of breaks up the brow, the eyes, the nose as a structure, the mound of the mouth, and it does so in a way that I really like. And so this is the rhythms that I represent. I'm just trying to include a lot of visual information because I'm a very visual learner and I really enjoy the visuals of learning art. But there you can see like the original portrait drawn over top and then just the drawing of those rhythms of the face. But these fat pads of the face, they really inform those rhythms that connect the features in a way that's really interesting. And if you understand it, if you understand how features flow into one another, it becomes much more manageable to be able to do something as difficult as the portrait. And the portrait is difficult. It's the most difficult thing you could do as an artist. Very challenging, especially when you're trying to get a likeness of a specific person. And it's so difficult because we're so good at seeing anything that's even slightly off from what we're expecting to see when it comes to the portrait. Our facial recognition is very good. You can see how even in young faces, those fat pads really inform what's going on. So if you're interested, if you'd like to get the full ebook, each page has many diagrams that cover different elements of the portrait. And they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, this has got a lot of pictures, and so it's worth tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of words maybe. So if you're interested in that, you can find a link to that in the description below. All right, hopefully you found these visual hacks helpful. I know I get really excited whenever I learn something new that I can apply to what I'm doing. If you found it useful, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I've been working hard on this ebook and on my other ebooks. There's one on the male figure, one on the female figure. There's also links to my sculpting courses in the description below if you're interested in that. Stay creative, stay productive, and hopefully I'll see you again soon in another video.